Hello to those who have just joined us. We're going to give just 1 or 2 more minutes for housekeeping. You're more than welcome to keep your video on. It's always fun to see people's faces. We will ask that for the time being, though, that we put yourselves on mute. That's just going to help us cut back on any excess noise. So we appreciate you doing that, and we'll get started in just a minute. All right, well, I think it's as good as time as any for us to get started today. So thank you all for tuning in and joining us on your lunch hour today. We are the My Way to Health team, and we're excited to spend the next little while discussing how to make some healthier winter soups and stews. We'll start off with some introductions. My name is Lisa Tiggis. I am one of the registered dietitians and wellness consultants on the My Way to Health team. In the kitchen today, we have Carla, who should be able to get her video started. There we go. Hey, Carla. She's going to be walking us through the kitchen components. We're really excited to be on site today. So just want to, of course, disclose that we are abiding by all university COVID protocols and procedures to ensure everybody's safety and wellness. So we are in separate spaces today, so that's why we've been able to take off our masks. So we are going to be doing our workshops on a quarterly basis this year so that we can still offer lots of great wellness tips and content virtually. And they're going to be on Thursdays at noon as opposed to our Wednesdays. So we're trying something a little bit different this year. You can save the date for the other upcoming wellness workshops we have. The dates are all on the My Way to Health website. And you can also find content on the Teams channel. We've been using that a lot this year, so if you're not familiar, after today's session, I encourage you to go over and check out what we have on the Teams page. It's just a really nice way for us to stay connected as employees with WashU and share different health and wellness tips. If you haven't gotten via email today's resources, your recipe guides and your handout packet, you can find an additional copy of those posted on the My Way to Health Microsoft Teams channel. And after today's session, we will also be posting a video recording. So if you'd like to review that or go back for any other details, know that that will be posted at a later date. So February is Heart Health Month. Yes, it has Valentine's Day, so we naturally think about hearts during this month anyways. So peppered throughout today's conversation, we'll be talking about how to make some heart-healthy soups and stews at home. It's important to have heart-healthy eating for everyone, regardless of having an official diagnosis of a cardiovascular disease. We can use my plate, which I have posted here, as a method and as a visual to help us make heart-healthy meals. Notice how half of our plate should be fruits and vegetables, and we have 1/4 of the plate grains, and then the remaining 1/4 of the plate protein. So this is how we can make a really balanced meal and make sure that we're getting plenty of quality vitamins and minerals coming from our fruits and vegetables, including disease-fighting phytochemicals and antioxidants that helps to reduce inflammation and really optimize our health. They're also really high in fiber and low in calories because they have such a high water content. So this helps us to keep calories in check. Fiber is also found in our whole grains, and this type of fiber is really excellent in helping us manage our cholesterol. It essentially binds up these cholesterol particles that are floating through our bloodstream and helps to excrete them through the body. So getting enough soluble fiber from our whole grains in places like oatmeal, quinoa, brown rice is a really great way to help manage high cholesterol or prevent high cholesterol. Next up, we've got our protein category, and we want to make sure that we're selecting lean proteins. What that means is that we want to select proteins that aren't really high in fat. The type of fat found in animal proteins is most commonly referred to as saturated fat. And there's a lot of research that supports a diet that's too high in saturated fat, especially in individuals who are predisposed to cardiovascular disease risk, may have more cardiovascular health issues down the line. So we want to select lean options like turkey breast, chicken breast, low-fat seafood options, and plant-based options too. So we'll be highlighting beans today as a really heart-healthy protein selection for our soup. We've also got low-fat dairy here on the side. We don't want to leave that out of the picture. Selecting low-fat dairy is a great option for an extra boost of protein, and it also helps to keep that saturated fat intake in check. So switching from animal-based proteins to plant-based proteins, like I mentioned with the beans, is a really great way to promote overall heart-healthy eating, especially because we're targeting that fat. We can apply these heart-healthy nutrition topics really easily into soups and stews. It's a great platform for that. Soups and stews, especially on a day like today where it's, kind of dreary, kind of chilly out there, can just be so satisfying and comforting. The thing with soups to keep in mind is that it can have what I like to call a nutrition halo effect. If anybody's heard of this phrase before, feel free to comment in the chat here. What that means is that it's something that sounds healthy, but isn't necessarily guaranteed to be healthy. Maybe like a salad. A salad absolutely can be a really balanced and healthy food choice, but if we've got too many high calorie, high fat, or less nutritious ingredients thrown into the mix, suddenly it's not warranted as a healthy choice. So let's go ahead and use the chat box here. Can anybody share or think of any ingredients that you might find in a soup or in a stew that makes it not as healthy of a choice, that gives it this nutrition halo effect, but it's not really deserved? You can also think about toppings or sides that you might commonly have with a soup or stew that is causing the calories or the fat or the salt content suddenly to start to really tick up. All right, we got the chat going. Thanks, guys. So we've got some different things to share a few. We've got cheese, we've got heavy cream, sour cream. That's popular to make it really thick and creamy. Let's see, some other ones that stand out are butter and, of course, extra salt. So these things are fine in moderation, but we can do a better job of making healthier soups ourselves as opposed to relying on convenience items or restaurant items that can really clock in the fat, calorie, and salt content. So today we're going to make 2 heart-healthy soups, and since everybody cooks a little bit differently, you'll notice that we've got some suggested recipe serving sizes, but these can really vary depending on a few different things. So starting us off with the difference between a soup and a stew, it's going to be the amount of water or liquid that's in that soup or stew. So if we've got more liquid, more broth, it's a looser, more fluid dish, we're going to call that a soup. But if there isn't too much in the way of extra liquid, that's more of a stew. So thinking more chunkier. So today we're technically going to be making some soups, but in your recipe packet, you've got options for some really great hearty stews as well. So I think a great thing to keep in mind is you can treat these recipes that we've provided you with as a framework. You can make some small tweaks and adjustments, not only with the ingredients themselves, but with the seasonings and also the type and the amount of liquid to really tweak it to your personal preference. Also in the recipe packet, you'll see that we've offered 3 different instruction methods. We've got a stovetop method, a crock pot method, and an instant pot method, so that these are really flexible recipes to whatever your cooking preference is, and maybe it also depends on how much time you have available. So feel free to follow along in those documents. So we're going to, think about how we can start making some heart healthier stew choices. So as I had hinted at earlier, we're going to start off with a dried bean soup. I don't know if you're like me, but I hadn't really bought too much in the way of dried beans. Then the pandemic hit and I thought, well, this is my time to figure out how to use dried beans, especially when I wasn't grocery shopping as much anymore. And let me tell you, they are going to be a pantry staple for me moving forward. I love my canned beans too. They're really convenient, especially if maybe I'm putting together a meal a little bit more last minute. They're still inexpensive and incredibly nutritious. But if you are working in advance, dried beans are really where it's at. They're even more cost effective and affordable compared to canned beans, and you can season them from the get-go. So Carla's going to walk us through how to do that from start to finish. One of the things that we're really focusing on today with heart health is less sodium. We know that a diet too high in salt can impact our blood pressure and cause that to increase. So a great thing about dried beans as opposed to canned beans is that they are salt-free. Now, if you only have canned beans available to you, that is a-okay. Just look for the ones that say no salt added, or another option would be reduced sodium. And we always want to rinse our beans before adding them to any type of dish. This can drain off an additional 30% of sodium, even from the fully salted ones. So don't think that these are off limits if you're having difficulty finding a specifically low sodium option. Another ingredient shout out, I want to take a moment to talk about the difference between broths and stocks. These words are often used interchangeably and they're referring to really similar products, but there is a difference. Broth is made by simmering meat in water. So chicken broth, for example, you take a few pieces out of that chicken breast, you load up your pot with the meat, but maybe also a few veggie odds and ends as well. So it doesn't offer quite as much flavor, and instead it's got a lot of salt to help boost up that flavor profile. Now, stock, on the other hand, is made by simmering the bones and some extra veggie odds and ends, along with some herbs and spices in the water. This takes longer to make, but you're getting a much richer, deeper profile because you're leaching all of that flavor from the bones. So you're actually getting a little bit of protein, something called collagen from the bones. And you just overall are getting like a richer, a little bit more nutritious liquid, and therefore you don't have to rely on salt quite so much. So next time you find yourself in the grocery store and picking up your ingredients, take a few extra moments there and peruse your options. Look for the difference between broth and stock. Always try and look for one that's lower in salt. So again, looking for the stock is generally going to be your best choice, but I still encourage label reading because you just never know the variances between different products. Also look for ones that maybe say no salt added. Because veggies don't offer that same just like depth of flavor, veggie stock can tend to be higher in salt. So just again, do your due diligence. This is also a good opportunity to say that sometimes chicken stock is referred to as bone broth. So if you've ever heard that terminology thrown around, know that they're really just referring to stock. So at this time, I think Carla, are you ready to kick us off with our first dish of the day?
I am unmuted and with camera on, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna start with the base of most soups. You might have noticed that a lot of recipes usually call for 3 ingredients. They have 3 ingredients in common: celery, carrots, and onions. And that comes from French cuisine. It's called mirepoix. So it's really like a 2-1-1 ratio usually. So we're gonna start with cutting our onions, which I tend to have a love-hate relationship with onions because I love them in my food, but I always cry when I cut them. So what I really try to do is, if I know I'm gonna cut it, I'll cut 1, maybe 2, and just keep it in the refrigerator. And that way I can add it to different things. I can add it to my sauces. I can add it to chicken if I'm cooking that. Or even to my salad if you're okay with eating raw onions in salad. Or you can caramelize them. But that way, kind of like it goes with meal prepping. So my first step was I cut my onions in half, and now I have that flat surface, and I'm gonna cut horizontally all many times, right? And this is because I'm gonna use diced onions. So this is a way to do that easily. And now I'm gonna cut across. And really, you want to make sure you have a good hold in your onion, kind of like you're holding a tennis ball. And now, look at that. We have our diced onions. Can you all see that? And then, with the end, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to end up dicing the end of it. We have our first ingredient for our bean soup. And today I am using some navy beans. What I did was, before going to bed last night, because I knew I was going to cook a bean soup, I just added the water, soaked them overnight, and now I drain them. So you can see they do grow a little bit inside. It's also something you can do if you know you will be making soup at night when you get home from work. It's something that you can just let that soak while you're at work, those 8 hours. If you forgot, that's okay. You can also do and shorten it by boiling water and the beans for about 2 minutes and then letting it soak for about 1 hour. So it's a quicker way. But again, even though it takes extra planning, the taste that you get from the dry beans it's worth it. It's not a lot of work. You can just let it sit, soak, but definitely that extra step is worth it. Sorry, I don't have the mic on. Fix it. All right, the mic broke, so that's why I'm not wearing it. We have a special guest today. All right, so now I'm cutting my carrots. Again, we want to make sure we have that before I start. And we are going to be cooking this, so we want to have similar spices so they cook around the same time. Can you hear me better? I hope, yeah. All right, so, and again, like I said, this is the mirepoix from French cuisine, but we have other variations, kind of like from the Spanish cuisine. We have sofritas, so that might be with garlic. Or we might also see at the store some onions, celery, and maybe bell peppers. That's more of a Cajun influence. And then last but not least, I will cut my celery. So another great thing about making soups is, if you might notice, we are adding in a lot of vegetables in here. So if you have picky eaters at home, soups are great to just pack in those nutrients, add those vegetables. You might want to cut them even smaller than I am, just so we don't get anyone complaining about getting big chunks of vegetables. But this is a great way to add that nutritional value, add more fiber. But also, if you have vegetables in your refrigerator that you feel like are getting a little bit old and you might not be able, you don't like them in your salad anymore, add them to your soups. Especially like spinach, kales, those are great for soups. So now that I have this, I'm gonna go and, I don't know if this is in the camera. I'm gonna heat up my olive oil and start cooking those vegetables for about 5 minutes, just until they're a little bit tender. Then my other ingredients are going to be, so my beans, I have my vegetable stock, and also I have canned tomatoes. Again, you know, like we just said, we're using dried beans instead of canned beans, so why would I be choosing canned tomatoes? Actually, canned tomatoes have a lot of antioxidants. They're also very tasty. Just make sure that they are just the tomatoes and they don't have any added stuff, like any added sugars, added sodiums. Just read that nutrition label. But canned tomatoes is a great option to have. So we have like about a 15-ounce can here. And we're also going to use some minced garlic. So this is just one of my favorite things to have in the kitchen because it saves me time without having to actually mince the garlic. About half a teaspoon of this is a clove of garlic. All right, so I'm gonna start cooking this and I'll show you the result and then we'll have another recipe. But Lisa has more information for us.
I sure do. All right, let's get that PowerPoint slide back up and running. Okay, so we've got something here called the Salty Six. As I was talking about before, and as Carla was mentioning as well, we're looking for ways to reduce our salt in these soups and stews. So of course, step one is making it from scratch yourself. You have so much more control over it. Let's also think about what foods we might be serving with soup that could make it an even higher salt meal. Breads and rolls are surprisingly, I should say, high in salt, especially ones that are store-bought and are shelf stable. So some of our processed breads, that salt helps to extend the shelf life. That's also why our soups are high. If you turn over a can of soup, if you've got like a can of, chicken noodle soup hanging out in your pantry, go ahead and see how long it's good for. Chances are it's going to be a few years because of the salt. So again, if you're making things from scratch, whether it's the soup or breads on your own, it's less salt. You can also find lower sodium breads and rolls. Specifically, I know that at Trader Joe's and Aldi, I can get some lower salt options there. Cold cuts and cured meats. So this would mean deli turkey, deli ham, salami, bologna, any of those processed meats, again, have added salt to extend the shelf life. We know that after cooking fresh proteins, so like a raw chicken breast, you should probably eat that meat within about 5 days, but deli meats last a really long time because of all of that salt. So baking your own chicken breast and slicing it for a sandwich or to put on a salad is a great way to save on salt. Not only will it save on salt, but it'll also help you with your grocery budget. I provided this tip to a participant that I was working with last week, and yesterday she excitedly told me that she crunched the numbers and she saved so much money buying this week chicken breasts to cook as opposed to deli meat for her family that she will do it from now moving forward. When you're buying deli meat, you're paying for convenience, you're paying for salt and water. There's not a ton of protein to it, so consider making that swap. It's no surprise that sandwiches is number 3 on the list, because if you take number 1, bread, and you add number 2, cold cuts, you're gonna wind up with a pretty high salt meal. So you can imagine that if you're doing like a half a sandwich and a cup of soup, this could be a really high sodium meal. But with the lessons that you're learning here today, you have found ways that you can make this a more heart healthy option. Pizza, again, is a high salt option because we've got that doughy crust. Cheese is high in salt, again, from a preservative standpoint, and especially you can have some different toppings like the cured meats like sausage or pepperoni. So think about making your own, and you can think about picking some healthier toppings like boosting up those veggies, or if you like a meat pizza, maybe doing a little bit of shredded chicken breast on there. And you can choose a low sodium tomato sauce, and you can get all those same heart health benefits from the lycopene that Carla was talking about by picking a tomato sauce or a tomato paste for your pizza. And then also just be wary of things like rotisserie chicken. They are a great convenience option, but the reason why they stay so nice and juicy after rotating on that spit all day long is because they've been pumped up and plumped up with some saline solutions. This is similar to what you might get in a Thanksgiving turkey as well. So do your label reading. This is what I always recommend, and look for the salt content and also in the ingredients list to see if some sort of sodium or saline solution has been put into your chicken. If you love the convenience of a whole chicken, you can throw that into your crock pot, and it's a really hands-off, low-fuss option. And I'm excited to try that in my Instant Pot. That's on my to-do list for this month. So there's other ways around that if your family really enjoys like a whole cooked chicken in a much lower sodium way. So we are going to move on to our next option. This is my husband's absolute favorite soup. So I had ulterior motives when putting this into our recipe plan for today because I was hoping to find a healthier option that we could do at home, especially because he loves to get it in that giant sourdough bread bowl. And as we just learned, store-bought soups or restaurant soups plus large portions of bread can really pack a punch when it comes to salt. So this Bread Co. broccoli cheddar soup, if you look down at the nutrition profile here, we've got 1,330 milligrams of sodium, and that's not even taking into consideration a piece of bread or the whole bread bowl. So to give some context, we are looking for less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium for most people on a daily basis. Now, for those who are following an even lower sodium diet because you have diagnosed hypertension or high blood pressure, we're significantly dropping that to 1,500 milligrams. So you can see that if you had one bowl of broccoli cheddar soup from Panera, you're almost at your daily allotment for sodium. So I find that that's really eye-opening, especially from a serving size perspective too. So we're making our own here today. Yes, it looks a little bit different, but I can tell you all the great flavors are still there. And check that out. We've almost reduced it by 2/3 the amount of sodium to just 500 milligrams for a really substantial portion too. This isn't a tiny cup of soup. This is like a hearty, nice bowl of soup. A good amount of calories, 240, leaving you room to still have a little side, but we've got a nice amount of fiber. This is something that absolutely can be here in a soup, like that green bean soup. But again, many canned options might be kind of scant on that. And we've got a good amount of protein, especially for this being a vegetarian dish. So when you do the math, you can save 120 calories, 11 grams of fat, and that's mostly saturated fat because we are cutting out the like heavy cream and things like that. Less carbs, and still got a great amount of fiber. So, all right, Carla, please show us how to make this delicious soup.
Oh, it smells so good. I wish you guys could all be here. Very excited. So I did promise I would show you how the bean soup ends up looking. And it looks a little bit like this. And at the end of it, I did add some spinach. And this is something that, again, if you don't mind the spinach, you can just add it like that, or you can do a rough chop. But a great thing about soup is you can make it, if you know you love the recipe, just double the recipe. And if you have handy containers like these, you can freeze it. And you can build your like frozen section for when you have really busy weeks. And that way you only thaw what you're going to eat instead of having to thaw all of the soup that you might not be able to eat in time. All right, so that's our bean soup. And now on to one of my also like childhood favorites is broccoli cheddar. And again, we have our mirepoix, so onion, celery, and carrots. And the good thing about this recipe is that we are going to blend it, so our cuts don't have to be perfect. They don't ever have to be perfect, but this one's we can get away with some bigger chunks. So since I already cooked the bean soup, again, that meal prepping, 2 recipes at the same time, we have that handy. I saw some of the comments said that potatoes might not be the healthiest option for soups, but we are using potatoes in our broccoli cheddar soup today, and it does add kind of substance where it makes it creamy. So we are cooking that, and this is going to be what takes the longest to cook in our soup today. We will let that cook until our potatoes are soft enough so we can use the immersion blender. All right. And again, doesn't have to look perfect, but we do want similar sizes so it cooks evenly. All right. So again, flat surface. We don't want any cuts in the kitchen. I'm gonna do small dices so it cooks semi-quickly. All right, so I have my olive oil there. I'm gonna add these vegetables, get those going. All right, and then use that same bowl for my potatoes. All right. Another great thing about making the soups homemade is, like Lisa mentioned, we have more control of the ingredients. So even the seasonings, we don't have to be completely afraid of salt, but by having the control, we know how much is going in it, right? So we can stay within the recommended amounts while still making it tasty. And again, these recipes are all just suggestions. For example, the bean soup that we were making, that goes really well with some smoked paprika. So if you have ideas to make these recipes even better, please let us know. Or if you get to try them later on, let us know also. All right, so Our potatoes ready while our other vegetables are cooking. So I will add my potatoes, and also what do we need? We need liquid. We're also using vegetable stock, and we are using milk today to make that a little bit creamy and tasty. Okay. And Lisa mentioned that this might not look like your usual version of the broccoli cheddar soup. So this is what it looks like. And again, this is something you can play around with. I use our immersion blender. And ours is pretty smooth. If you don't mind the broccoli chunks, that's okay. You can just take half of it out, use the immersion blender, or put it in a blender, and then mix it. So that's the beauty of cooking at home. You can just make your favorite, make it what you want. So with the immersion blender, I still have one big chunk of broccoli. So. All right, so those are cooking. Other things we use today, once that our potatoes are tender, it'll take about 10 or 15 minutes. I will add the broccoli, let that cook also, and then that's when I use the immersion blender. Then I'll add the cheeses. We use Parmesan cheese and reduced fat cheddar. And for toppings, that's another thing. Like, you can choose how much cheese you want to add, or you can choose to add more broccoli as a topping, or more veggies, or maybe celery if you want crunchiness, or sour cream. Just watch the portion sizes. But yeah, this is what our broccoli cheddar soup looks like. Lots of vegetables, very tasty. All right, Lisa.
All right. Well, I will tell you what, I am excited for our lunch today. That is going to be so great. All right, let me get my screen share up here one last time to show you guys our last few slides. Perfect. So in addition to all of these recipes that we have in the packet for you, we've got some additional resources and handouts. So if you're following along, this is one of the first handouts that you'll see in that packet, is 4 steps to great soups at home. Not to sound like a broken record, because we've said it a couple of times, but these recipes are just supposed to be a guideline and some suggestions. Soups are something that you can totally just make up on the fly based on what you have at home. That is exactly what I did this weekend when I found a jug of low sodium tomato juice that I had bought. Don't remember why, but it was going to expire in a week or two. So I combined that and some salt-free stock that I had made from my leftover Thanksgiving turkey bones, and threw in whatever veggies that I had that were not looking so hot any longer, and some shredded chicken I had in the freezer, and voila, I have soup to last me all week. So this is a great thing for you to follow if you want to kind of freestyle and make some great soups at home. So we do want to have some protein, otherwise that soup or stew is really just not going to carry us through. If it's just some liquid and maybe some veggies, we want to make sure that we've got some oomph to that to keep us fueled. So pick a lean protein, then add some bulk with your veggies. These could be fresh, they could be frozen, they can be canned. Whatever you have on hand or looking to get rid of will absolutely work in your soup. Next, pick your liquid. We've talked about some great ones today between lower salt stocks, also picking evaporated or skim milk. But in a pinch, you can also use water and really just ramp up all of your other herbs and spices and seasonings so that it doesn't feel too thin. Adding whole grains is another really great option here. Barley is one of my favorite greens to put into a soup. It just adds so much nice texture and chewiness, and adding that extra fiber, as we talked about, not only helps to make it a satisfying and complete meal, but we know that it's very heart healthy and that it's going to help with our cholesterol management. So this is a really nice template to follow. There's also some good materials in here about Life's Simple 7, and we've got a nice handout for you to follow if you're looking to make some changes in your life and take charge of your heart health. You can focus on any and all of these 7 areas to get started. So we know that nutrition is a really big component, but there's other areas for us to focus on as well. We know that being regularly active is very important. For heart health, we're looking for 150 minutes per week of moderate aerobic intensity exercise. So that could be a brisk walk, could be going for a bike ride, or doing some aerobics at home or at the gym. Something that's going to keep your heart rate up and make you feel a little sweaty. Keeping your weight in check is also very beneficial. We know that by just some modest weight loss of 5 to 10% of an individual's starting weight can have some significant clinical improvements with managing heart health. So that means your blood pressure can go down and your cholesterol can go down just sheerly by losing a little bit of excess weight. Controlling your cholesterol and managing your blood pressure through these lifestyle changes, and sometimes that means a little extra help from some medication along the way. We also want to make sure that our blood sugar is well balanced. We know that consistently high blood sugars can lead to development of diabetes, and we know that there's a really close relationship between diabetes and heart disease, so it's a great reason for you to focus on all parts of this puzzle to promote good health. And of course, targeting tobacco is really important. So if somebody is smoking, it's extremely beneficial and essential to managing heart health to reduce or quit. So the good news is that we've got programs to help address all of these areas through Wellness Connection. With My Way to Health, you can use our individual wellness consultations to set personal goals and maybe take some of this information that we're discussing here today to put that into practice. So you can head to our website on Wellness Connections page to set up a free appointment. WashU employees that are benefits eligible get 4 free wellness consultations per year to set healthy goals and have a little bit of support and accountability from our team of registered dietitians in helping you achieve those. We're also excited to be in our first cohort of our My Way to a Healthy Weight program. This is a program, again, for WashU benefits eligible employees who are looking for a little bit more of a robust program to help them manage their weight. So we'll be enrolling at various points throughout the year, so you can stay tuned for the next opportunity for enrollment. My Way to Health also is partnered with the Freedom from Smoking program to help with smoking cessation. And then we've also got Teresa Fisher, our wonderful United Healthcare nurse advocate, to focus on a little bit more of the clinical side. So if you do have some of these conditions and you're looking to make some changes from more of the medical management side, Teresa is a phenomenal resource. And again, you can find her information on Wellness Connection and the HR webpage. Well, we want to thank you all for your time today, and hopefully we haven't made you too hungry looking at these delicious recipes. We love the different comments and questions that we've been getting so far in the chat. So I think that between Natalie and myself, we've been trying to stay on top of those, but certainly if others have come to mind, this is a great time for us to field those. So starting with Darlene's question. So again, just to reiterate, that the handouts are posted on the Microsoft Teams channel. If you're not already a member of our Teams channel, you are able to get easy access to that through the My Way to Health website. And maybe also if Natalie's able, we can get that link posted in the chat here while I field some of these other questions. All right, looks like Natalie's on it. So let's see, Gina had a question. How many servings does that soup template give you approximately? Gina, if you're referring to the four components, the 4 steps to a healthy stoop at home, again, this is really a guideline. It's really up to you depending on how much of each you want to put in. But if we circle back here, so if you had about a pound of protein, a rule of thumb is that usually comes down to about 2 cups. Veggies, another 2 cups, liquid, 4 cups, and your whole grains, 1.5 cups. So that's putting us at close to 10. So it kind of depends on the size that you're looking for. If you're looking for a standalone meal, I feel like a 2-cup portion is usually pretty spot on. So we could say that could get you between 4 and 5. But again, if you're looking to do this as more of an accompaniment, maybe to a nice robust salad or a half a sandwich, you might be able to get more servings out of it. Good question.
This is half of the recipe, of the bean soup recipe, and this is how much that made.
Okay, so that's half a recipe, and so that's probably like about a 4-cup container, would you say, Carla?
Yes, and It was like half a pound of beans.
A half a pound of dried beans. Okay, so I hope that helps give you just a little bit of reference. Carissa asked a question about some different tracking apps. So Lose It is the app that we actually recommend in our weight management program, and that is a free app. There is premium content that you can pay for, similar to MyFitnessPal being another free one. So know that there's already a lot of really great content available to you. And what's really neat about Lose It is if you're working with one of us as a wellness consultant, we have access to a platform that allows us to kind of sync up with you and be able to provide some feedback on your tracks, what you're tracking. So that can be a really valuable combination. All right, Natalie has copied the link to the Microsoft Teams channel, so thank you for that. So Kim, it sounds like you went ahead and upgraded yourself to the Lose It Premium. You just get some extra bonus features. All right, any other questions? Feel free to post. Also, if you have questions that come to mind after, or maybe you're listening to the recording of this, you are always welcome to contact us directly at mywaytohealth@bristol.edu. Again, just want to give a shout out to our other programs. Set up your free wellness